Hello and welcome to the AIM webinar series. I am Mike Ellen and I serve AIM as their member engagement manager. AIM is an alliance enabling the cooperation, development, and standardization of AIDC technologies. From barcodes to RFID to IoT, AIM's your advocate. Any organization with an interest in data collection is a beneficiary of these efforts. Membership provides an opportunity to influence the direction of the industry, develop policies and standards, access market reports, and engage new partners. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items I would like to go over. First is AIM's antitrust policy. It's the policy of AIM Inc. to conduct its operations in strict compliance with the antitrust laws. No AIM activities shall create even the appearance of a violation of the letter or spirit of the antitrust laws. Next is our collaboration and work product policy. AIM committee meetings and presentations are held for the primary purpose of advancements in our industry, which necessarily involves development of work product intended solely for the public domain. AIM's developed this policy for the protection of its members who engage in this important collaborative effort. Also, attendees are muted throughout the presentation. If you have a question, the presenters will be answering some at the end of the presentation. You can ask questions by chatting those to AIM member services. You will also be notified when this presentation recording is available. Today I'm here with Richard Scott, who's the Assistant Fire Chief at Bonita Springs Fire Control and Rescue District.
All right, hello everyone. Like you said, my name is Richard Scott. I'm the Assistant Chief with the Bonita Springs Fire Control and Rescue District. And I'm here to talk a little bit about today is the RFID inventory management system, as you see on the slide, that we implemented here about 5 years ago, and talk about some of the advantages, the unique challenges that we have in our industry, and how it's benefited us. So I think to go through a little bit about the organization we have here, the district, is important because everyone on this call isn't in our industry, and there's some unique things about what we do here. We run about just under 8,000 calls a year, and we have 7 different locations where we have fire stations and apparatus and crews that are housed there. We have 9 advanced life support apparatus that include fire engines, rescue units, and even a marine unit. And each one of those advanced life support units carry about 160 items on them. And if you think about any other type of business, any other type of business, when they run out of things, if you go to a local hardware store and they run out of something on the shelf or something's not there, when you look online, a lot of the stores don't have things, then you can order, you can wait another day and check on it. When we carry things, the things we have to carry, whether it be medical equipment or assets, we can never be out of things, right? We can't run out, we can't not have those on our apparatus. So that's a unique challenge that we have, and it's very challenging for us, and takes a great deal of oversight. So in our the other thing here, our master supply room, in order to facilitate that, in order to keep those items up on those apparatus, we have to have basically a warehouse that we distribute all those things out to those 7 stations in this case, and keep all those apparatus up to speed 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, because our business never closes down to stock the shelves or any of those things either. So the other thing we use the RFID system for is our fixed assets. So all things on all those apparatus, anything over $750, we tag as well. So some of the challenges I mentioned, and I pointed out some of them a few minutes ago, but in addition to that, when you can't see, when you don't know exactly how many things you had because we have 0 failure levels on this and we have to keep them there, as I mentioned, all the time, every day, what happens in our industry is people overbuy. They overspend, they hoard because they can't see, and they're afraid of running out, because if it runs out, we run a medical call, an emergency call on a heart attack or a stroke, as you might imagine, or a car accident. We have to have those things. So there was a tremendous amount of waste. So about 5 years ago, when I came into the position in administration, I came off the road. I was a company officer, paramedic, lieutenant on a fire engine. And when I got into this situation, I already knew the challenges because I was out there, and I saw the waste and the inefficiencies that we dealt with. So I was looking for a solution, and it goes right along with these challenges. And we looked at barcodes and the typical things. In all honesty, we were counting on a piece of paper. So we had our emergency crews, like myself, and we'd go in our medical supply room, and we take the piece of paper and count whatever, Band-Aids, ice packs, widgets, if you will, and then send it in. By the time that process took place and someone came and brought it to us, we may have run another, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 calls by the next day, maybe 30 or 40, depending on how busy we were. So the inventory that we sent was not accurate, even if we did it perfectly when we did it. So the hoarding, the other goal here in the end that actually we weren't even sure of was the money that we would save, the decreased inventory waste and the time spent, as I mentioned. The other thing that's very unique about what we do, whether it's here or in a hospital, in a pharmacy, any place that sells medications, is there are pretty severe penalties if you have or keep expired medications. Now, you all know when you buy something in the store, whether it be aspirin or something, you look at the expiration date, and you go through your cupboard once in a while, right, and you find it, and you discard it, hopefully, before it's too far past the expiration date. But for us, if we get caught, we have state inspections for our advanced life support license, and if we get caught with those, anything that's expired, we can lose our ALS license, we can get fined. If we happen to give one of those expired medications or fluids to a patient, the paramedic that did that can not only lose their license, but also be charged with a felony. And also the department of the district, in this case us, can also lose our advanced life support license with the state. So those penalties are pretty severe, so we take that very serious. So our starting point, I went into this a little bit already, was to find a solution. And our solution, once we dug into this a little bit, turned out to be the RFID. And our partner was the Silent Partners technology that I kind of ran into at one of our officer local chiefs meetings that we were at. And I started looking into it, and it seemed like our solution. And I have to full disclosure here with y'all, I don't have a software technology background at all. In fact, I had trouble signing in today to this thing, right? So I was a little intimidated. In fact, I didn't know what RFID stood for at all. So I had to be educated on all those things. And that's kind of leading into this next portion of the challenge of getting started with this. So the room you see in the slide in front of you is our logistics coordinator, and you see how organized that room was. Before we started this, there was boxes piled in this room almost to the ceiling, and you couldn't walk through the door. So many of these things, and if any of you are in our industry, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So the organizing, we had to empty all those locations, those 7 locations, plus our master supply room that you're looking at here. We had to empty all those rooms and reorganize it so that not only could we see it, but the RFID system can read it, whether we used a gun and we have smart rooms I'll go into in a minute. So that all had to be done. We had to repackage everything we had. And again, I'll get into some details on that. You have to label all these with the RFID tag. And of course, then you have to implement the system across your agency. So the advantage, the big advantage is once we had this all in place, was and I almost can't stress this enough, and it's used a lot, but the real-time visibility, as I've already touched on a couple times, was we didn't anticipate how it would change the way we did things. When you can look out over, in this case, 7 stations, but there's other departments that have 20, 30, and 40 stations. And stations being you have a room like you're looking at in the slide here that has those very same items that you would have in your master inventory room, just in smaller quantities. So that you can see at any time, any place, on any smart device, you can see exactly what you have with all those expiration dates already put into the software. So it gives you full visibility at all times. So the next thing on the slide here is the smart shelves, and I just described that. So there's readers and antenna in these rooms that run 24/7. So you can see everything all the time. You can also do this with a RFID gun. That we have several of those here, the zebra guns, and you can walk in any location or go to any apparatus where these items are tagged and immediately within a few seconds or minutes inventory the entire contents. For instance, the room you saw on the last slide, there's about 2,500 items. In fact, I did it today in that room, and in, I don't know, less than 30 seconds, I inventoried the entire master supply room, which gives me, again, not only what's in there, the quantity, the expiration dates on every single item in there. So it's tremendous. These are all passive tags, by the way. They aren't active. They don't read at any distance. You know, you have to go in with the gun or the antenna in the room, read them, and then upload them into the software. So the organization, this is a little bit more detail on how we achieved what we needed for our needs. For instance, the picture on your left is an IV catheter. Everybody's familiar with IVs, right? Then you go to the doctor and they give you fluids, or they stick this needle in your arm. Well, we do that because we're advanced life support and we have paramedics. But they come in boxes of 100 or up. They start at about 100. We at our satellite locations, at our fire stations, we didn't want to put a box of 100. That would defeat the purpose. We don't use 100. It would take us months and months, and then they would expire, and we would basically wind up discarding them and throwing them away. That's a tremendous amount of waste. So when we get this box in, we pull them out and repackage them here in these clear Ziploc bags and tag them individually. That allows us to control our inventory at those locations that's manageable for our needs. So based on the time of year, the amount of calls we run, and how often you want to deliver, you adjust those par levels all the time. For a department or a place that runs 3 and 4 or 5 times the calls, they may put 10 in there. They may package them up 20 or 50. The point I'm trying to make is this is very scalable. If you want them in bags of 5, as you see here, and then if you look there on that 16-gauge IV catheter label that's in the middle picture, we carry 20 or 25 maybe at each station. And then as those levels drop, of course, we'll replenish them. If you wanted 50, you may put three bags of, a couple bags of 20, or whatever you want to package it. So no matter how big you are, and I've helped quite a few departments that are 10 times the size of ours, it is scalable to meet the needs of that department and that location. And then over on the right are some unique tags. That's our medications in those small vials, as you all have seen before. And that's just a different type of tag that we use. So a couple obstacles we had to get over was the tags, the passive tags don't read through fluid and metal. So the bins on the right, there's a foam insert in the bottom, and those individual vials sit inside so that those read properly. So the software, again, I touched on a little bit. This is just a picture of one of the pages and what it does. But over on the left gives you total inventory at all our locations, and you'll see up there, I think there's 6 levels. It's hard to see depending on the size of your computer screen. But the point is, you can at a quick glance look at all items at all locations. On the right is a quick summary pie chart of expirations by month throughout the year, so you can anticipate, how much you're going to buy, how much you're going to spend as the year ticks by. And then at the bottom is one of our locations. That's Station 1 Med, it says, and those are BVMs, bag valve masks. That's the thing that you see that you actually ventilate if someone's not breathing or you're assisting with their respirations. So underneath that, you'll see, and you can pick the information you want to see. Current location, last seen, the expiration date will come up on all those things, so you can see at a glance anything individually at any location. Another picture of the software. So this is a pick ticket. This is typically in the mornings when myself or anybody that's looking at this comes in, and we'll look at a location. This one's for Station 6. So we set a minimum quantity for that station. As you see up there, the par level count. And then next to that, it shows exactly how many are there. And then, of course, next to that shows you what you need to replace that. So this has become so easy instead of doing this once a week or once every 2 weeks, which, by the way, the crews used to have to do, as I mentioned before. And to get off on a side note here a little bit, remember, the crews that are there and trained as EMTs, paramedics, firefighters. They are not inventory control logistics people. So they're paid to train, to run calls, they do public events. Many times they're not even there. So if you need any of this information, they may not be in station for 10 or 12 hours at a time. So you can't even get this information unless you drive to each one of those locations and see it. So back to this, I'll look at this typically every morning, or I did in my last position, and know exactly what that station needs. Now the bottom part of that where it's expired in red and then soon to be, That was customized by Silent Partners for us. You can put 30 days on that, 60 days, 90 days, whatever you prefer. In our case, we do just-in-time inventory, which allows us to keep a very small quantities because we can deliver on a regular basis. So we only wanted to know 30 days out. So it shows you that information there. These are our fixed assets, anything over $750 as it says. We have about 1,500 items throughout our district, throughout our fire department. And these are a little different tags. Tags are customized for what you want to use. We have them in bunker gear, you know, the full equipment that you see a firefighter going into a fire with. We have specific ones for the air bottles. We have tags for our heavy equipment, nozzles, hose, fans, extrication equipment, jaws of life. So there's individual tags for all those things. And there's a picture of our ladder truck we put in there because even that truck we have an RFID tag on. So every year we have to do an inventory for audit, government agency. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. So we used to take several people, and in our case took probably weeks, maybe over a month. We now do in days. So with the RFID gun that we have, the zebras, you'll walk into a station, inventory the entire quantity of that ladder truck, for instance, or any other of our engines in a few minutes, and even walk into the office and computers, desks, anything you want to tag, it shows up, of course, and you do inventory and upload it to the software. It also will show you what is missing because of where it was assigned before and what you have that isn't supposed to be there. For instance, when we go on a fire and we have 5, 6 apparatus on a structure fire, many times this equipment gets put on the wrong engines when they leave. It's chaotic, as you might guess. So if we want to re-inventory to make sure that the right things went back on the right apparatus, again, it happens in minutes. And we can see all those things and put everything back in its proper place. And of course, if anything's missing, we know right away instead of waiting until, you know, this something that's very expensive is missing and we don't know what happened to it until later. For instance, a cardiac monitor that we use, we can do 12 leads just like you would do at a cardiologist. Those are about $40,000. They have been left on scenes of calls. Again, chaotic calls, very, very critical calls. And the truck has driven away without it. So this is something you can also, those rooms, those smart rooms, you can make smart vehicles. I put vehicles down there just so I would remember to bring that up. And then the vehicle is continuously inventoried and can show up on our computer that's in the truck. So you would know full inventory of that before you even left a scene. So you wouldn't even have to go back and re-inventory it. So there's the possibilities are far-reaching, and I'm still learning about what we can do with it. So a little bit of a summary, and then we'll go into some questions. Our first year, our return on investment happened in the first year. So we made all the money back from this, doing all the smart rooms, the gun, the tags, the whole deal, which turned into about a 50% savings over what we had spent on that budget, line item budget the year before. It enables the firefighters to concentrate on their primary mission, which is saving lives and protecting property. It increases visibility at all stations. The expired medications is amazing. So once a month now, because medications and medical equipment typically expire at the end of the month or the first of the upcoming month, we can send out an expiration report. So anything that was ever entered that we ever received, we put into the software, and that's there until it's gone, until we take it out, or over a period of time. Again, you can customize that. So we send that out to all crews. We tell them exactly what's going to expire, and then in the rooms we can already see it. So we'll have them double check the apparatus, and they give us a quantity report back. So again, I would say our percentage of expired anything is, never say 100%, but boy, I would bet it's 99%. And I look, and we just do not have anything out there anymore that's expired. And of course, the decrease in time and personnel is almost very, very difficult to put a number on, a dollar amount number. Typically, I mentioned some of the things before, the challenges with our crews doing inventory. Now think about, and being out there for over 20 years on one of those trucks and as a paramedic, we run a couple critical calls in the middle of the night, for instance. or a weekend, holiday weekend, and we didn't have administrative staff, and we ran out of things because we weren't properly supplied. We would have to get in our fire engine and drive across town to go find these things, or have an officer like a captain or a battalion chief deliver us those things. In the meantime, our apparatus is shut down. We cannot function and treat that next patient. So not only do we compromise the people we serve in the district, but we also, again, fuel, time, cost, if that battalion chief has to come out. Again, that's not their primary job to deliver items out to, again, 7, 8, 9, let's say 20 different locations when the logistics officers and the people are not here on the weekends. So all of that almost went away. We just don't have that anymore because you can constantly adjust your quantities and your inventory based on the needs of the geography of that station and the time of year and how many calls you're running. So those are just some of the summary in the end that we benefited from, and we continue to see benefits that even after 5 years that I didn't anticipate that we're still benefiting from. So that's our story. That's the pluses that we got from it. As you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about it, and I still talk to quite a few departments about it and try to get them started because where we came from and where we are is tremendous, as you can tell.
Okay, great. Richard, thank you for the information today. There's still time if people want to send some questions or comments over, but if you're ready, I'll get started with some of those questions we've received already.
Sure.
First question we have is, how's your solution helping manage expired supplies and medicines? Have you also been able to use this for inventory management during the pandemic? And if so, how's the process changed?
Yeah, that's one of those things I was just mentioning about the benefits and how they've presented themselves. So this pandemic, everybody I think in this world, but definitely this country, has seen the difficulties and the challenges in our industry, whether it be hospitals, fire, EMS, keeping up with PPE, protective equipment, whether it be N95 masks that's been in the news so much, goggles, gowns. So this was very challenging. So that part early on when I talked about packaging, we decided when this started to repackage down even further to have just very, very tight control over our usage on those things because they were golden to us because they protected not only our firefighters and paramedics and EMTs, but the public. So we packaged those all the way down to 2 in a bag so that we could see as things moved. Remember, every time the crews would use these, they would go in their station and pull them out. So immediately we could see the usage and where it was in our district and then try to anticipate those problems and keep up with that. So no one, again, ran out of things and couldn't treat the citizens or their customers in our district. So it really did make a difference. And we're still doing it now, of course, because it hasn't gone away yet.
Okay, another question we received is, are you aware of other public sector workers utilizing RFID as well, like maintenance workers, etc.?
This has really opened my eyes over the last few years and seen that it's being really used almost everywhere. The filter on my refrigerator at home, the water filter, I tried to cheat it. You know when it starts to blink at you that you need to change it in 6 months and you take it out and you put it right back in? It's got an RFID tag. You can't trick it anymore. The printer on my printer at home, you can't have an aftermarket. You have to use the same one. So it's being used everywhere. I know several of the agencies around here, not fire or EMS, around here within the state of Florida, I know, are using it in their inventory control. That's, again, it's almost endless, but yes, it's being used everywhere.
Okay, great. A couple other questions we received, and I'm just going to kind of combine them, is what was the biggest hurdle to getting this implemented? The culture, tech phobia, things of that nature?
Personally, I think that I mentioned the tech phobia for me was my biggest hurdle. The next step was the implementation phase. I do get, especially in our area, I get calls because the word's out that we've been pretty successful at this. So that implementation of that reorganization, it's like your garage. I use this analogy. You walk out there and your garage is a mess and you want to know where everything is. And you know that you can throw away 50% of it, but no one knows where it is. You empty it in the driveway, You have to clean it and then bring everything back in, label it, put it in its right container. And that's a daunting task for a lot of people because most of our garages are very messy, as you all know. Mine is. So that's very challenging. The culture change once we were there was easy because remember, we're taking out the crews completely out of this. They do nothing but go in the room, take what they used on that emergency call and put it back in their truck. Everything else is taken care of from behind the scenes. So that part was very easy for us. So those first two, I think, are the most challenging.
Great. Another question we received is, what impact has RFID had on managing PPE for your department?
Yeah, I touched on that a little bit, but to go a little further, and I don't want to go on too long about it, but when we ran into this shortage, and it's still going on now, again, it's in the news every day, as you see, because we couldn't buy it from any of our vendors, the local government, whether it be emergency management, the county, the state, distributed the PPE. So when we needed N95s, we have to justify it. So the ability to show our exact usage on a daily and weekly basis ensured that we got the proper amount back. So I sent that report in this morning to the county, which then kicks it up to the state to see what the needs are. And if that number's not accurate, they're not going to get a lot of the right amount of equipment, which means we don't get a lot of the right amount of equipment. You know, the other part of this that comes to mind is that goes back to Hurricane Irma and the FEMA reimbursement. Once the governor declares it an emergency in the state or in the local, but in this case it was in the state for both these things, you can get FEMA reimbursements as a government agency. So exact numbers. You also, by the way, I didn't even say this, but you can attach the exact dollar amount for each one of these items. It stays in there forever, the pictures. So a usage for a timeline was very easy for me to run a report on when we're looking for FEMA reimbursement, like for Hurricane Irma. Or now for PPE, what we've ordered, what we've used over, you just plug in a date, whether it be 30 days, 60 days, 90, it doesn't matter. When we come to the end of this thing, I can run a full report on everything that left the individual stations in master supply with a dollar amount already on it. That was almost an impossible task before, and now in a matter of minutes, I can run that report, hand it into finance, and they can send it off to FEMA. Because if you're not accurate, those of you who have done this, if you're not exactly accurate with FEMA, you don't get reimbursed. So that was another, again, just recently we figured out, what an advantage the system created for us.
Okay, great. Another question we have is, how quickly after a natural disaster are you able to determine how much a storm cost your department? And has that changed since you deployed the new solution?
Yeah, I just kind of touched on that, and that was the first exposure we had was Irma. And again, we wanted to know, besides the building damage and things like that, and overtime, and I think our equipment, what we've lost, you can see what's missing. Of course, what was used, what was reimbursed, and everything that was purchased. You can look at invoices, but moving things, these consumables on these medical calls, which is about 70% of what we do in our industry, by the way. So I focused a lot today on medical, and a lot of people think firefighters put out fires, but across the entire nation, about 70% of what we do is medical. So a big part of our expense turns into, of course, exactly what we're talking about. So again, I think it's just that visibility, oversight, and detail enables us to get reimbursement and put a real dollar amount of what we're spending.
Okay, great. And what are some roadblocks for a fire chief adopting this type of RFID solution?
I don't mind saying it again because I've said it a couple times, talking to other fire departments. I think they get stuck somewhere in the implementation phase. It is different. It's a different culture. We've mentioned it. You brought it up. It can be a little technologically challenging, and the implementation phase, and then the maintenance. And I mean maintenance is you have to the organization and things in those rooms you saw. That's got to be maintained. So you can't just flip the switch and walk away from it. But you couldn't do that in any inventory system. So again, I think the biggest challenge is the implementation and getting things right so that it runs like now. Ours runs like automatic. It's just part of the routine. and we really don't have any more challenges.
Okay, a couple more questions. Will the solution work in smaller firehouses?
Oh yeah, it can work for anything. I mean, you could put a sticker, an RFID tag, because there's so many different types. The stickers we generally use on the consumables, the smaller items, but most things. You can put it on anything. There's a couple small departments near us now that I've been talking to, and they just have one room. But it's still an all-day job, once a week or a month or whenever they do it, to go in there and count every item in there and check every expiration date. So they want to do it just for that one room. So they put everything in the software, and then at any time they can walk in with that gun and inventory it, whether it be once a day, twice a day, or once a week. So yeah, it's completely scalable.
Okay, great. And the last question we have for today is, do you have a specific case study that goes a little more in depth about your findings at the fire department, and where could they download or review that?
I don't have a case study per se. Not really. You mean with real dollar amounts on there and things? I don't. I think I did. I tracked it at one time years ago. But like I said, I remember it vividly because it was such an impact about what we saved the first year and how we did it. But it was all the things we talked about today that enabled that to happen. A lot of it was just downsizing what we're buying because you can see all of it. And it automatically just lets you spend, buy and spend a lot less money. One other thing that didn't come up in a question that I think is valuable to bring up, when our auditors came in this year, there's another thing we found out just this year. They wanted a report on our medical equipment and consumables and how much is used and how much is wasted, because that's part of your overall score on your audit. And again, it was almost like it was a setup to give us an opportunity to a challenge to produce that. So our waste was, we got, I think, the highest score you could. Our waste was very, very small. And the other thing we do is we found one of these rebuy companies. So anything that's coming up for expiration, sometimes I'll pull off, depending on what our quantity is. I can anticipate it, pull it off the shelves, off the apparatus, wherever it is, and we resell it to these companies that take it, and then they resell it. So we recoup sometimes up to like 50% of our initial investment on all these things. And again, it's all possible because of that visibility.
Okay, great. Well, that concludes our webinar for today. Richard, thank you so much for the information and your insights today.
You're welcome.
And also like to thank Zebra Technology for their support of this webinar as well. Thanks everyone, and have a great rest of your day.